also see from his background. And I think he's a non-fiction reader, which is what he mentions. And he also loves playing tennis. So thanks, Isaac. Gaurav, very good morning to you. You will need to unmute yourself, Gaurav.
Hi, good morning.
Now, a very quick introduction about Gaurav. Gaurav has close to 2 decades. Gaurav, I think 2 decades is happening very soon, right? 19 plus somewhere, right? So, yeah, 2 decades is a large number. Experience in FMCG, retail, and financial service industry. And he has made marquee contribution to leading organizations like Dabur India, PepsiCo. I think we worked together, but we never crossed the path. Fitness First and Religare. And he's also an entrepreneur. He has founded many firms. In his current venture, Stratboard, he helps people, practitioners in finding credible service providers for the full spectrum of their HR requirements. Gaurav's biggest strength lies in business HR, and he specializes in bringing practical aspects of human resource management in the real world on the bedrock of core concepts of fundamentals of people management. Gaurav is a MBA from SIBM Pune and is based out of Gurgaon. So with that, again, a very warm welcome to our author and the expert. Isaac, I'll request you not to mute yourself. Now the action begins. You can't get much of a breathing space. I hope you are keeping some water with you. I'll quickly set the objective of this session, and I'll also talk about the objective of the book. Right? One question which we generally ask an author: what was the trigger, why you wrote that book? But I think Isaac has made it very loud and clear. The objective of the book is threefold, as he has captured from the book, and this is not, it's very well articulated in the book. One is to normalize career breaks, right? It's perfectly fine to take a career break. Second is to highlight the unique and amazing things that can happen to you while you are on a career break. And we have a testimony in Isaac where he went all the way to US to study filmmaking. That's some detour, I would say, but I think he followed his passion. Now he's taking it ahead, and that's his mainstream. And I think what I really liked about the book is the third thing, which is to provide practical tips and advice that one can that can help you make that comeback. Because karna to bahut log chahte hain, but how to start? Should I start? How to go about it? How to simple things like what should be your CV style? How do you maximize LinkedIn? What should be a template of? And we'll discuss some of this as well. So I think it's a very practical book. While Isaac has used his own personal experience in this book, he has also taken the effort to speak to 50 plus professionals from varied backgrounds in the industry. The only common thing was they all went on a career break and came back successfully. So that makes this book a rich compendium of not just Isaac's vast experience, but also 50 plus professionals. And Isaac, being a master storyteller certified by the New York Film Academy, he starts the books on a high, follows a very good clear structure, and holds you your attention. And it's a put downable kind of book, and a very quick book. So it's not something that you need to spend 3 days or 4 days. I think a few hours, and yeah, it impacts you and it awes you and inspires you, I must say. The book is divided into 3 subjects. One is letting go, where he talks about key consideration involved before you take a break, or when the unexpected break also hits you. So while in his case, it wasn't unexpected, but he has spoken to a lot of people where it was unexpected. Second is leveraging the break, where he talks about aspects of break that people don't prepare for, like loss of routine, lack of motivation, depression, etc. And third is leaping for a comeback. How do you come back stronger into either the path which you were following before the break, or you diverge a bit, or you take something which is very strong detour. And Isaac, I must say, if I had got this book a year back, maybe I might have went to a few more rounds and maybe cleared something. The kind of deck that you prepared for Netflix, I don't think I've done that kind of deep work in some of them. So it's a good book for everyone and not just people who want to play. So on that note, I'm sure this is going to be a very interesting session. Request everyone in the audience, any comments, questions, please feel free to put in the chat window to me, and I'll be more than happy to take it to Isaac, Gaurav, whoever is relevant. And on that note, Gaurav, you have gone through the book. Would love to hear your thoughts, both as an industry expert having 2 decades of experience, and also from an expert in the HR fraternity.
Well, thanks, Nupun, for setting the context. And I think you very beautifully already summarized, for the audience, everything, in terms of how the book is structured. And it's beautiful, Isaac. I must compliment you formally, for putting this together. I love the title. I think the biggest thing, how you've sort of branded it, and you said reboot. I mean, it clearly, even if you go by the dictionary meaning of reboot, it's not as difficult and it doesn't take that much time. And it really, when you reboot your machine, it comes back with most windows back on. And not just bring it back on, but bring it up, perhaps back on with greater success. So I think a topic which was much waiting in the woods to be talked about. And I love the boldness with which you've addressed it very openly. You've shown very sensitively the facets of vulnerabilities that exist within us, and for a variety of reasons, when people have been contemplating breaks. I mean, I think this book helps them at least resonate with the fact that there are many, many others who are in the same ship, and there's a large community of folks out there who are going through this journey in their lives. As society, I think a lot is changing, and some of the facets you have also brought out from that in the way you approach the subject. And I think the most beautiful thing was how you brought in a lot of myriad perspectives of people from different walks of life. You went ahead and spoke with 50 people, looked at their life journeys, and what made them travel the path they did. And I think that confluence and convergence into finally creating, I would say, some thumb rules, I would say some hacks, which, I would say are universal. So I would really compliment you in being able to crystallize those learnings and, coming out with some hacks. I particularly, when I simply looked at the two-dimensional graph of experience and, getting time back into finding a job, I think it's a beautiful representation, very simply put. I love the fact when, where you talk about, the financial kitty, what's the right financial kitty? Often, there are so many people who want to meet me because I also, quit a well-established career and, started something in the unknown zone. And almost for about a couple of years, I had people calling me up for a coffee. These were people who were sitting on the fence and, always wanted to take that plunge, but never gathered the courage. And one of the things that they were also wanting to establish while having this cup of coffee with me was to figure out how much is sufficient, right? I mean, and there are people who've met me over 3 years with the same question, and I only saw their goalposts change, So when I first met them, they said, is it okay if I get 1 crore in the bank and then maybe pursue something which my heart desires? No, but my, medical situation at home makes me feel this time I should go for a 2 crore. Or now kids are growing up, so I need 5 crores, and then maybe life can begin. And, I think, the way you've been able to say, depending upon where you are in your level of experience, if you can fetch for 2 years, that's good enough time. And I completely resonate with that thought. I've been through that journey. I think 1 year is less, 3 years is a little daunting. So 2 years is a good idea in my mind. And like that, I mean, various nuggets, which I don't want to spill out the wheels right now. And I think there's a lot more conversation to brew. So I'll come on to, some, parts, other aspects of things that I'd like to exchange with as we go across. But just to get things started, I mean, coming back to my fascination with the name of Reboot. Firstly, why Reboot from your own perspective? And was there another name or two that were in close consideration when you branded this?
Well, firstly, thanks to you both for all the generosity of your words. I think you've been very kind, in the way you've assessed the book and the depth to which you have gone. It's very heartening to know that experienced professionals are also resonating with the book, as in the way you are. So coming to the title of the book, the first title that I had in mind was a break. Actually, just very simple break. And I felt it was catchy enough. I'm a marketing visual guy, so I thought you could do like something interesting with the word break and the way a cover could be written. But my editor actually came up with the name of Reboot, and the moment he said it was not even like a 5-second decision for me. It just sounded so much more action oriented and positive compared to break. Where break could have just spawned on to mean different things, but reboot was very, very specific. And little did I realize back then that I had used that word a couple of times in the text of the book, in the manuscript, but it did not strike me as a title. So I think it was all to do with actually my editor Sachin at HarperCollins, who came up with this title. The other titles that kind of were in the works were things that signify resilience. So, right. So spring itself was like something that, I was very keen of, but I think Ambi Parmeshwaran had also just written a book called Spring, right. That was taken. But yeah, I guess it was within that family. We did have a discussion around, with my agent and this one as to, does reboot make it too academic? Does it make it too technical? Will it, like you said, you referenced a machine, will it make it sound like a little too much on the technique right. stuff? But I think people just instantly were able to connect with it.
Correct. Great. So, what's been the most fascinating part of your own career break? I mean, for the sake of audience, while I know you've captured it and you've had multiple career breaks. So in your reckoning, I mean, and I want you to touch upon the fact that when we take a break, a lot of times we don't know what's going to happen next. A lot of times, I mean, some of us would know what do we want to do, but a lot of us are at a point where we don't know what to do, right? Yeah. So I would want you to talk a little about that. I mean, you've expressed that in great detail in your book, but I think that is something which the audience may be keen to hear you on.
Yeah, I think for me, during both my breaks, and technically, even just after leaving Discovery, I took another break to figure out, what I wanted my next chapter to be. So in a sense, I've actually taken 3 breaks now, trying to just, reset my life or reboot my career, right? And one thing which I have gotten used to now, which I was not used to in, let's say, phase 1 and phase 2 of my breaks, were the low points. Actually, that's what hurts the most, that, nobody picks up your phone. People you have written to have not responded. You've sent your CV, on like multiple portals, and, you've written like 60, different notes, to different LinkedIn, people, connects, etc. And nothing has worked out. And I think that's the part which would initially actually, especially in my first break and my second break, both had me like really rattled. So my first break was only 3 months. So I was able to quickly come back. So it didn't feel like, it felt like, 3 months I was able to manage. My second break, I did not want to take it longer than 1 year. I thought ki 1 saal mein I will come back. It took me 2.5 years to come back to a level, from a designation, from a role, from a compensation pay cut. So that was like it's like, you sign up for 1 year and, you suddenly are still, after 2.5 years, you are not, where you're going. So that cycle was actually, very hard, obviously. But in hindsight, the fascinating thing, just to answer your point, is that whenever there is a low point, there is a tendency ki, the sense ki, yaar, maine galat kar diya. I did something wrong. And I think to get past it and just have that belief ki nahi, something else will work out. It is what it is. Forget the past. Now, whether it is my mistake, whether I've been laid off, whether, I had to take a break to take care of to be a caregiver for a parent. And I've, among the people that I spoke to, these were all reflections that people have. And everyone has, had some kind of a moment wherein you say that, shit, why me? Gosh, why is this happening to me? And I think that concept of shared humanity, that everyone has these moments, and you are not the only one who is facing this, and eventually you will come out of it, was actually fascinating to me, because at that point of time you feel ki career khatam ho gaya, matlab it's over now, I have lost everything. And but just to kind of keep chipping at things and just believing that nahi, this is a 30-year career, right? And I think that's one mistake that I did when, I would beat myself up a lot saying, yeah, I was doing so well in Puma. Why did I have to give a job? And it would keep eating me. It would keep eating me. But then eventually now when I look back, it's the best thing I have ever done is actually take those 2 breaks, in hindsight.
Absolutely. And I completely resonate with what you're saying. And, just to add a little thought on similar lines, when I switched, I mean, people thought I'd gone crazy, and, there's family context, there's peer pressure and everything you've talked about in your book. But the fact is that, a lot of people look at you with doubt in terms of, kya ho gaya? I mean, what is the issue, So I think one of the first thing is how the society sort of looks at it and saying, is there an issue if you're taking a break? I think that change of mindset, if somebody is wanting to go out there and do something different, how do you look at it as a community? And touching upon the aspect, I think so that change needs to be driven far more. True. And the other thing, which perhaps worked for me was, in this transition, or making it comfortable for me to be able to accept the new reality I was going to get into, of course, with choice, was the fact that, okay, what's the worst which can happen? It was that one question, which just said, okay, this is what it is. The worst that can happen if God has given me life and this thing, dal roti chal jayegi, right? So if that's okay, correct, there's nothing for me to worry about. Yeah. I think it's that comfort level may be different for different people. Absolutely. If you can just face that one thing, that okay, what's the worst which can happen, and address that fear, I think you will fly. Yeah. And there is absolutely, no issue in being able to continue to, discover as you go along the path. Yeah. But what I also, now, wanted to circle back with you saying is, a lot of people continue to think about taking a break, right? But if you look at data, and not just data which is published, but even the data that you've sort of compiled in your study with 50 people, I also saw that about 70% or maybe 70-75% of people who are taking breaks are actually taking them for compulsive reasons. Yes. Right? Yes, that's right. And not as much out of choice. Yeah. Now, let's talk a little about that, because I don't think that given the environment and the economy and the work pressures, that number may be only limited to 20-25%. Yeah. Of voluntary career breaks. So let's hear your thoughts on that. Yeah. So look, I think that it does require a certain mindset to be able to say that, I'm going to leave something that is comfortable and reach out for something that, is either a personal goal, or, I feel like I'm burning out a lot, or, I feel like, I need to just focus on something else for 3 months and then see if I think it is a hard one. And typically, while a lot of people want to take that break, I think it's fear which kind of sets them apart. Ki uske baad mein kya hoga? I think that is the number one thing which holds people back. Number two, I have also seen that they also actually do not want to take a break without a plan in mind, which is also a good thing, by the way, right? Because if you just take a break and say, ki, oh, from tomorrow onwards, I'll just, do like some blue sky thinking, that's also not ideal. So I think kudos to those people who are actually not taking a break. I've called it out in the book as well, that it does help to have, I will try this, or I will go after, this particular vocation, or, if I'm having burnout, I'll just travel for a month, right? So one of the gentlemen, a very senior gentleman who's covered in the book, a gentleman called Alok, incidentally, he was at Pepsi. I don't know if your paths crossed with him, actually said that, he was losing time with his daughter. While you, and again, like I think middle-aged working professionals who have young kids, I'm sure that's a problem a lot of people resonate with. There was a mother also in the book who took a break exactly for that reason. So I think as long as at least that one aspect is clear, that am I doing this for upskilling, or, I'm doing this for, for spending more time with family, I think that one base level bit is helpful for people to realize.
And coming back to why is that number only at 20-25%? And this is my personal opinion, but I think our sense of inward reflection is not as high as it should be. I think if people reflect, everything that we do in our career is actually always to, please external people. And I think we do not reflect internally about our lives, our careers, our spouses, our partners enough as to, what should I be doing better? And I think if people start asking that question a lot more to each other, to oneself, I think automatically people will probably start, saying that, okay, I need to do this better in my life, or, this is a dream I had, or I just need to spend, more time with my kids. So I think that inward sense of reflection probably prevents people. And again, this is not to say that there are only some people who have it. It's also a function of time, society, external pressures, the next designation, the next role. Again, the feeling that there is always this perfect point in a career, jiske baad mein everything will be right? You said 1 crore hoga, 2 crore hoga, 3 crore hoga, but there is no number which is right. So I think those kind of factors play into each other for that number to be just at 20-25% is my guess.
No, absolutely. And I think one last question before we break into the next leg of the session. I'm sure Nipun must be keeping time on that. But predominantly, I like when you talked about the fact that, when people look at their careers, right? I mean, it's not one single track, that's a 40-year track, right?
Yeah.
When you start a career and end a career, right? I think it's very beautiful the way you express the entire concept of when you're taking a break, you may be starting a whole new track by itself. And, your career is therefore an assimilation of various races, perhaps you've this thing. So it's okay if you've lost one race here and there, but as far as, so let's talk a little about that and your thoughts on that. I really loved that thought.
Yeah, so it's again something that was not inherently, let's say, in my head when I first started my career, right? See, I think now looking back, when you graduate out of, let's say, an MBA college, the first thing always is, how's everyone else doing? How am I getting placed versus, all of that? And those are very, very valid concerns.
I mean, every day I deal with people who are saying, okay, I am 2007 batch. He's 2008 batch,
exactly.
one level higher than me.
One level higher, etc.
What do we do? So there is.
And I think and when you have a conversation like that, your first thing is ki mera to is saal hone se reh gaya, or like package kam hai. I feel like, and the reason why people always have that feeling is that everybody just wants everything now. Nobody wants to see how rich they can make their career in like, a 30-35 year working period. That's a lot of time to, like set aside, some of these things. But having said that, like I was also guilty about that, of that, right? When I was, kind of just setting out on my career. But at some point of time, especially because of the break, because, so the hardest thing I did, taking that second break especially, was letting go of my designation card and to be known as Isaac and not as, let's say, a marketing head of a particular brand. I think for me, letting go of that was very, very hard. And because that was my identity, that is everything I stood for. I could open doors with any sportsman in India or the world, or any celebrity in India or the world, saying that, I'm, Isaac, I'm marketing head Puma, like, I want to have a meeting with you, right? Like, we want to talk to you about your next film or your next contract. When that slipped away, I think that was the first time I realized that, okay, will I always be known only by my designation and my card? And I think just letting go of that aspect was very enriching in the long term, because now it doesn't, matter to me at all, as long as I'm working on things that are fulfilling to me. I'm providing for my family, or, like I'm being the best version of the person I can be, the professional I can be. I'm respectful towards people. Nothing else matters. So I feel these are some of these things that, I think these are some of these things that, we never attach enough, importance to. And my hope is that, and I think things are definitely, changing, Gaurav, you might have seen as well, people are being more independent. They're caring a little bit more about what they are rather than, who they represent. I think that's definitely changing, but it took me some.
I'd just like to add, Isaac, I mean, to what you're just saying, I mean, there have been times when, if you've been in a senior role, I'm sure you've had situations where people would wait outside your cabin for perhaps 4 hours to see you.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the table with the title taken away, those same people may not even answer your call back for the next 5 days.
Yeah.
And that's I think the truest litmus test of whether it was you or your position.
Exactly.
If you were living in the fallacy of your position, then you've never made your own identity. And I think that's the true thing, that, are you really working on your own self and your identity to be really feeling, that sense of purpose and that sense of accomplishment in whatever you're doing in your career. And I think being titleless is also something I've been enjoying a lot. At least, that in this entrepreneurial journey, when it gives you that liberation of, saying that, okay, if some people know Gaurav Bakshi, that's good.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just good enough. Right.
Yeah.
So,
and Gaurav, the other interesting thing is that if those people, whoever you were in touch with, were only in touch with you because of your designation, they were anyway not worth being in touch with ever.
Absolutely.
Right? So, like you actually find, of course, you find yourself, you find your comfort space, etc. But more importantly, people who really matter to you will actually or eventually start gravitating, towards that. And whenever work happens, work will happen. But at least you really are able to decipher the difference between people who are there with you for a tactical relationship versus people who genuinely like the person that you are, or have something to value or contribute, to the person that you are.
Right. No, absolutely. So let's quickly circle back to Nipun. Nipun, should we carry on with our set of questions further on, or would you have something from the audience? Let's maybe.
So it's a lovely conversation. I thought this can keep going, but unfortunately we have a time constraint. I'll take 3-4 things which in the last 20 minutes I think you guys touched on. I think one was very important, was the external view. हम क्या कर रहे हैं? How does others see it? Becomes at times more important than I think what we see, and that become the first lens way of looking at things. I think that was a very important point. The second was comparison. I think while you both said, I also have been guilty, and see everyone uska batch, uski gaadi, right? I think comparison is something which we really need to see how to come over. Self-doubt, I think that's something which you said, which resonated with me as well. Isaac said a very important phrase, and I just captured it. What we are versus what we represent. I think your point of Isaac minus the logo of Puma means, what is the difference? I think that's a very powerful thought. And lastly, I think people who are in our contact versus people who actually matter. I think that's what eventually it boils down to. So we have one question. It's from Rupa. HR in any company does not see career breaks with compassion. They are often contemplating the worst that can happen to the candidate. How and when will this perception change? This is both for, I think, Gaurav and Isaac.
I'll let Gaurav begin.
I completely, think that this is one of the biggest issues that HR needs to address, and organizations need to address in terms of mindset. A lot of organizations, I mean, this concept of getting back and career break is not new. I mean, it's almost 2 decades that some work started happening around it, right? And there are many organizations who are a little more progressive and matured in their processes, etc., who are able to now run specific programs for returnships. For freshers, you call internships. When you get, experienced people wanting to make a comeback, organizations have specific programs called returnships, where there is, assisted onboarding of people to help them, travel the path they might have missed, whether it is in terms of specific skills or, or the rules of the game may have changed in this while. So stuff like that. So organizations are making a shift. But I think one of the main things that needs to change in terms of mindset stems from the fact that we as HR, and organizations have been fascinated to look for people who are not looking for jobs. Please get what I'm saying. I'm saying,
Yeah.
there was this phase of a phrase called passive talent, right? Now, what is passive talent? Passive talent is people who are doing their jobs wherever they are, and because they are not looking out for a change, likelihood that they are successful in what they are doing, and therefore a greater tendency to get such people for befitting roles versus those who are out there and maybe on a break or have not been able to handle crisis, etc. I think that has been one of the biggest fallacies which has been in existence. But I think gradually, globally, I mean, say Western countries, I'm seeing that these things are much better off. India, I think a change is beginning to happen. I can't predict how much time it's gonna take, but I'm seeing that some seeds of change have started taking place, and I think with authors like Isaac who are bringing this subject mainstream, more momentum, more community conversations will only get us there. So that's what I can say.
Yeah, completely agree, Gaurav. I also had a similar kind of an experience. Like the first 10 years of my life, I think I was trained to look for CVs by my boss and everyone else saying, people should not change too many jobs, they should be stable. Is there a gap somewhere, right? Like we've all been guilty of that. But I think at least in a lot of the companies today, however, those conversations are not happening, which is a great thing. You just evaluate a candidate for the merit that he or she is bringing, irrespective of whether he or she is, in a job or out. In fact, in Discovery, I mentioned it on a recent podcast as well. One of our leaders in, Discovery content was actually a lady who was currently was then on her break. And not for a second it crossed us, and when I say us, other people who are involved in the hiring process as well, that whether we should look behind that CV and try and read between the lines. None of that conversation happened, and I'm talking about 2018. So I think those conversations are now dwindling. But having said that, I think there is still, the majority is still, I think it's not easy to see that you've come back after a break, but definitely there are winds of change that are around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that was helpful. I think, Rupal, the winds of change are blowing. I think it will get stronger.
I think just one last aspect. I mean, one thing which I think very recently organizations have started realizing is the way the talent market has been going. I mean, for good talent today, I mean, leave the last few weeks of extreme recessionary mindset, but good talent would ask you any amount of hike, right? I mean, multiples, not just percentages, but multiples, I would say. A lot of organizations we've been dealing with now realize and give us specific mandates to say that, okay, can we look at folks who want to make a comeback, because marks are important. These guys, this pool is likely to be more realistic in terms of the ask, as well as perhaps try and bring greater passion to the job and may not be shopping too much after they get this assignment, right? So I think there is substantive merit for organizations today to look at this pool. It is not just a context of bias, but it makes a business case for them to look at this pool very aggressively.
Yeah. That's an interesting one, right, Gaurav? Because it's almost like you can use a break to your advantage, unknown to you, because there is perception now beginning to build. Absolutely. We were actually hiring for somebody, in a senior leadership positions. And one of the suggestions that came our way, Gaurav, now that you remind me, was that, there are some mothers who want to come back to work. So, I will send you some CVs. And I was like, wow, that's great, bring them on. So I think that's definitely happening in some circles.
Yeah. I think Gharwapsi is acceptable these days. So on that note, what I'll do is we'll pause the questions for some time. And what I'll do is I've taken a few excerpts from the book, Isaac.
Right.
Just to show how the book is helpful and being very, it's covered those minute details which are important, but there's not much available actually. So I'll just share my screen and show a few things which I thought were very practical things captured in the book, and would love to hear your thoughts on them. So I hope the screen is visible. This is an excerpt from the book on financial planning. And I think what Gaurav also mentioned is this grid of how much years of experience you have and what is the financial runway you have. It's a very simple, but I think very effective and helpful grid that you have created. Can you just say a little more on this, on the whole
Yeah.
financial
So
prudence
basically,
planning?
the principle behind is that the more number of years you have spent in a job, the longer you will take to come back to like a role, because there are only so many positions at, let's say, the top of the pyramid versus more positions available at the middle of the pyramid and more at the bottom of the pyramid. So somebody who is, let's say, just 5-6 years of experience, and if he or she is struggling to think about a break in a market like India, it's, to me, it's a no-brainer if you have like 4 to 5 months of financial runway with you. Now, incidentally, this data is, of course, anecdotal and what I gathered from people who have taken breaks. I also looked at some other data that actually my former boss Karan Bajaj actually put in his book, which is a commissioned research of how much time do people need to take to come back to a job. And so mine was more anecdotal from like a sample of 40-50 people and my experience, and Karan's was a little bit more sort of scientific, and it had like actual data point. Interestingly, they both converge to the same point. They both are saying that for 10 years of experience you should at least keep 8 to 12 months of financial runway. And this is keeping in mind that the first opportunity that will come in your way might not be the best opportunity. So this is almost like the higher end of the buffer that you should keep. That if you're, let's say, you have 10 years of experience, something has happened, either you're laid off or let's say a maternity break or whatever else that has come through. Can you immediately just look at your financial savings and say, do I have, in Gaurav's words, meals on the table, basic Maslow needs for the next 6 to 12 months, right? I think that's just very important, because then I think what it does is it allows you to approach people without that fear of mind I don't know what's going to happen for me. So in February you should be completely like assured that you will see through till December without any major thing like coming your way, without any major impediment coming your way, right? So I think that is how I had kind of positioned it. And the idea is that if you're, let's say 15-20 years, it is okay to take like year and a half to get the right role. And again, this is something that I I've seen experienced professionals who've opened up about their journeys, etc. Some, I would say, timed their return a little early and took some compromises a little early. They could have waited it out a little bit more, was my sense. So which is why I've given this rough estimate, which I hope sort of just helps people keep it.
Yeah, fair. I'll come back on this compromise point later, Isaac. I think that's one of the questions I wanted to discuss with you and Gaurav. The other thing which I found was very, in hindsight, very obvious and practical, but a lot of people don't heed to, is the format of a CV. And I think you have mentioned also about how to position your career break and your career description on the CV. So this is a simple excerpt where you have mentioned the popular Elon Musk viral CV in one page, and also a format of your own experience, a concise summary of career break and overall job description. Can you elaborate more on this as well?
Yeah, so I'm very passionate about like hiring the right people in the right roles, etc. So in my roles, and I'm sure Gaurav also probably must be receiving tons and tons of CVs. My personal experience says that 85 to 90% of the CVs that I have received so far are actually fairly poorly written. It takes time to parse through what the candidate has done. And it's so unfortunate that even, in spite of all the advanced technology, etc., at the end of the day, the thing that you evaluate, the first impression is always on the basis of the first 30 seconds when you parse through a resume. And I feel that a lot of people just do not spend enough time thinking as to, if you have to make like a 30-second elevator pitch, what should that CV say? And and I also realize that I don't know any senior leader. Gaurav, please tell me what you think of this, because you've probably done a lot many more CVs than I have. I don't think people go to the second page of the CV even anymore, right? So my idea was that I don't remember the last time I went to the second page of a CV of any candidate. Like I'm currently, like hiring our team at Ivory and stuff like that. But I just feel that first page is all that matters. So make your first page speak volumes. The first 5 or 6 lines that you have written up top matters. So that needs to really deliver like almost like a guttural punch to the person who is reading it. And then, of course, the most important things can come in. And this company called Novo Resume use this as a PR machinery. But I think it just shows that there is so much that you can pack on even on a single CV. So yeah, I think those couple of directions. For both my breaks, actually, I never had a conventional CV. I had a website. I had what I have shared here is just like one entry of the first pager. I would keep putting new things on the website. I have not made a conventional CV in the last 10 years at least. So just wanted to share that. And I know those CVs have opened doors even when I was on a break, and that's why that element to share with people whatever and hopefully it works for them. Gaurav, what's been your experience on CVs? Sorry, I think you went on mute. Yeah.
Do I need to just a second?
Yeah, thank you. My unmute was actually disabled. I never realized that. I was, but I think I'm sure a lot of us may not know this statistic, but on an average, a recruiter spends about 15 seconds looking at your resume.
I didn't know that. I was saying 30. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's hard fact. So, it's your choice whether you want to show 5 lousy pages or 1 impressive page in that 15 seconds, which is largely going to make a visual impact. The first stance is really a visual impact, and when I say visual impact, I don't mean, imagery around it. I mean, the organization, a brief summary, the key job, and that's it, little bit around that, right? So that's what makes a difference. And, 1 to 2 pages is max, nothing above that. It's also representative of your ability to package, more and less, your ability to, especially in roles which are market facing roles, where communication is important, where, perception is important. How you package your own resume makes a whole lot of a difference. And I think this is an area where I've seen a lot of work happen in the recent past, starting from the time these CVs perhaps went viral. I think in the last 4-5 years, a lot has happened. So, but I think, the one area where I would want, where I think platforms like LinkedIn, etc., are helping is to be able to standardize some of these things.
Yeah.
I mean, in the benefit of recruiters, they also get maybe 10,000 different types of CVs, really. And for organizations which are not using technology to shortlist, which is a majority of Indian organizations, maturing, growing organizations, an average recruiter is spending a lot of time digesting a lot of CVs. A lot of them have actually just been copy pasted from here and there. Right? So I think those are issues which we need to solve, and the truthfulness of a CV needs to come out, and a little more standardization will help. And I think with a lot of our clients, we've been now using LinkedIn profiles as a first, go-to, because it's simple. It's very one page, and unless somebody already has it ready, but that's the context.
Yeah.
Yeah. And coming to the last point which I had as a excerpt was on the cold outreach, right? And Gaurav also mentioned about LinkedIn, and you have also emphasized in the book about the how important it is to leverage LinkedIn, and you have given few templates. So can you elaborate a little more on the whole cold outreach thing?
Yeah, the cold outreach bit is essentially, it's highly likely for anybody in any position, irrespective of level or hierarchy, that there are more important people out there who probably have what you need, but you don't know them. Okay, this is probably like, like for any level of career, there is always, somebody out there who you don't know, and you just need to reach out to them. And my experience has been in this regard that cold outreaches actually work wonderfully well. When you're seeking a job, whether, for funding requirements, when I published my first book. So I have actually put myself out there seeking things from people in terms of these kind of, requirements, job, publishing contract, funding, multiple times. And I have seen that people probably just stop at the point when, they write 3 or 4 mails, they don't get a response, and then they just stop. So there are 2 things to it. One is, what is the ideal way in which, you should reach out to someone? Like, again, coming back to Gaurav's point of how can you package less and more when you reach out to someone? That's one. And the second one is that at what point should you give up, if at all? The answer to the second question is never. Okay, which is an easy one. Never stop asking. Okay, like just never stop asking what you need from people who you don't know, because there is nobody is asking you to pay a tax on asking people. So I am of the believer that if I need something or you need something, just keep asking, right? And keep asking tons and tons of people. Eventually one will crack. That's and I've seen that repeatedly work. The first part is, how do you package something so that in a manner wherein it does not seem like you're only like getting things from people versus not giving them anything. And the ways in which I have seen cold outreaches work better is when you give the person something. So the Netflix example that I have written, the Airbnb example, these are all brands that I wanted to work for. And I had gone the conventional route of saying that, hey, I'm so and so, I was to do this. I would love to work for Airbnb. Can I get like a 30-minute, like chat with you? Didn't work. And I made one simple tweak in which I said that, hey, I love the brand. I'm a advocacy of the brand. I have a few marketing ideas that I have put together in a deck that I'd love to share with you. That's it. I had not even made the deck. And I had just put this just to see whether, I get a response. And then I started getting, like really, really good responses. The Netflix person reached out and then, hey, we'd love to know what you have to hear. The, Airbnb person said the same thing. The Uber person said the same thing. And, it gave me a little bit more purpose and direction to sort of say that, okay, I'm pitching myself for the role without actually going down the conventional route of ki CV aisa hona chahiye, ki this is what my credentials were. I told them that this is what I believe your brand should be doing in India. And I think that has an enormous impact. And I had no clue about this, but years later, I read this book, Lean In which Sheryl Sandberg basically mentions this one candidate who calls her. Imagine calling Sheryl Sandberg when she's the Facebook CEO and says that, I know that, Laurie Goller says that, I know a lot of people probably call you for, jobs and CVs. I'm calling you to ask you, what is your biggest challenge today? And I want to solve that for you. Now, in my years and years of, experience, nobody's ever asked me that and positioned themselves, right? So, and it's such a simple hack. If somebody had asked me that, I would say, in Puma, okay, I'm struggling with online sales back then, or, I'm struggling how to get DTC commerce word out there, or, how do I get more referrals? I would have given them 4 or 5 things and we would have had such a meaningful discussion. So I think just that bit about never stop asking, but also think about what you can give the other person, instead of just asking.
A related point which you mentioned in the book is agendaless networking.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So I think, again, our human mind is kind of just geared to only think of people when we need them. And our first reaction is always, hey, I just need this from you. So, can you hire me, or can you give me funding, or, can you give me a job and stuff like that, right? Like the way I look at things is that the people who are important, who are going to be important for me in 5 years' time, I'm connecting with them today on stuff that is not important, wherein, I come across as an equal. I'm not asking them anything. If at all, I'll probably just say that, hey, I read this one particular quote of yours. I thought this was also important. What do you think of this? Those kind of things are necessarily not anything that's going to give me a job or anything in the next 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. But we drive those conversations because I know in 5 years' time, that relationship that I will have with that person will become so important that, God forbid, I need some help. I would be not just coming across as another person who among, 100 people is again asking something. So I feel like agenda-less conversations are all about topics of interest, subject matter expertise, and just being curious about the field of interest that you're in and kind of sharing, like there was a very famous, like a very well-known VC in India who I had never written to at all. And one of the first things I did after I left Discovery was I did not even have a startup in my head, but I read something that he wrote, and I wrote to him about what he had mentioned, and I gave him my perspective. And I was not in a job. I did not require any funding then, and now we are in a place wherein I can reach out to him for anything. So just a real example of how that can work.
Yeah, there's a very interesting book on this called The Go Giver. I would urge everyone to read if not done. We are reaching The Go Giver.
Adam Grant?
No, I don't remember the author name, but yeah.
Okay.
I'll put it on the chat. We are towards the fag end of the session. So quickly moving to some of the questions that we have got, and will request a quick answer from either of you. There's one by Vrinda. Are career breaks viewed the same way outside India? Is it same dynamics where people find it difficult to rejoin and reach same heights again?
Gaurav, I think this is for you.
How about you want to take a chance at it?
Okay. So, yes, I think career breaks are definitely viewed differently abroad. They are a lot more accepting. And when I say abroad, I would say specifically the Western economies. I think the Southeast Asia and India economies are kind of still similar. There is just this sense of, that I could be guilty if I'm taking a break and stuff like that. But abroad, I've seen that there's almost like an accepted practice that college kids actually just finish their graduation and they just take a year to, I think it's got a particular, it's called something, I'm forgetting what it's called. So yeah, far, far more accepting, I would say.
Completely.
And there's one question stroke comment by Deepak, and it's about purpose, right? So, and Isaac, you have written about, I think that's one of the key points of the book, which everyone should read, finding your purpose in life. And you have written a very simple filter for that, which is, imagine you're on a deathbed and what would you regret the most? So can you take a minute or two to expand on the thought?
Yeah, so I think there are two aspects to finding purpose. One is essentially, and it's very hard to find purpose, right? Like, what should I really do? What should my life really stand for? And some of those larger existential questions. I just use two principles. Number one is, am I very clear about what I don't want to do? Right? The moment I'm very clear about, I don't want to do, let's say, 10 different things, options, choices, etc., that are available. I've considered the whole field. And here are, 10 things that I don't want to do. I think that's a great start. It's always easier to pin down on what you don't want to do. So that's the starting point. And the second one is regret minimization. I think it's now been popularized a lot in common parlance. Obviously, like Jeff Bezos was one of the original, proponents of this. He popularized this a lot. But the second one is if you are really like, living your last day today, what is the one thing that, you wished you would have done? So let's say if I were to ask this question today, by God's grace, I think there is very little that, I feel that, I should have done or not done. But I feel that always helps arrive, at a more sharper definition. So you eliminate what you don't want to do, and you ask yourself this question that if today is the last day on earth, what would you rather be working on? And can you at least, take out like a weekend or two to start working on that bit by bit and figure out if that is something that you want to do at all. I think that's the more practical way of going about it.
Yeah, just to add to that dimension, I mean, I have a slightly, a lot of us continue to, this is a very difficult question, one of the most difficult question to answer. And I think just to easen out the difficulty, I mean, one hack, like you mentioned, is at least know what you don't want to do. But another dimension that I like to put on the table is that, it may just not be that one thing. It's okay, fine. Maybe it's a battery of 4, 5, 6 things which give you comfort, pleasure, happiness, and connect. That's okay. So maybe, it's not one, it's 4 or 5 things. So keep doing things which keep you, keep giving you happiness. And I think from within those 5, eventually 1 or 2 will emerge, which will get you there.
Yeah, very well said.
We'll take the last question. Someone has asked, Amreen, may I ask you about your thoughts on career breaks for self-employed professionals?
For what purposes?
Self-employed professionals.
Self-employed professionals. Okay, so I think the nature of employment is actually not a decision vector to my mind, whether you're working for someone else or you're working for yourself. Career break is always welcome in the sense that you just have to know what do you want to take that break for. Is it because you're working too hard at it for a while and you're having burnout and you're just not happy, or is it because there's an alternate vocation that you want to give a shot at? I think that you should be a little bit more clearer about, is what I would say. But to me at least, who you're employed by does not necessarily matter, is the way I would go about it.
Yeah, I think that was super helpful. Career break is not about who employees, and it's about what you want to do and why you want to do.
Yeah.
So on that note, I think we'll end this session. To everyone in the audience, you have been fantastic. Thanks you for being a very patient audience, and I could see a lot of interesting comments. Unfortunately, we couldn't go through some of them, but yeah, it just shows that it was one of the most engaging sessions we had in recent times, and if time wasn't constrained, we could have gone on and on. Gaurav and Isaacs, you were wonderful. We have a very small token of thanks for you. You just planted one tree as a token of gratitude for each of you for taking your time and helping us with your interesting perspectives and really making this a very enriching discussion. And I think that's the whole idea of Friends of Books, our community, that book is not something which you just read and the chapter or the matter gets closed. Quite literally, discuss about it, discuss with like-minded people, read books which are of different maybe subject than you are, and you never know what strikes you. So on that note, request everyone to, it's a sales pitch, join the Frob community, download the Frob app from Play Store and iOS. Would be lovely to have in touch with you. And somebody asked you, can I reach out to Isaac and Gaurav? I think yes, you can go on their LinkedIn page.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as a friend said, Harry Potter also said, help comes to only those who ask. So on that note, it's sharp 12. We'll end the session. Again, thanks a lot, Isaac, for writing what I call a playbook and not just a book on career breaks. And Gaurav, I think your perspective really added, multiples to the value that otherwise we could have got from the book.
Yeah.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Nipun, so much for putting us together. It was wonderful to be a part of this Saturday morning.
Thank you, everyone. This session is available on our YouTube channel. We'll also post edited version soon. So in case you ever want to come back to it, or you want to share it to anyone who had missed, please feel free to share the link. And also this book is available on our store, frob.store. We call it a Frob recommended book, where which is, if you don't like the book, you can simply return with no question asked. You will get the
screen and confused about what to.
We really love this book, and I'm sure you all will. Thank you, and have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.